When did gender identity become popularized in the mainstream?
I don't know if I missed it, but I still didn't see the answer he's looking for, and I'm curious as well. When did mainstream TV and evening news and whatnot start using the terms properly in a manner such that it was always the way we spoke?
In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, so make of it what you will, society in general has become slightly more tolerant, so marginalized groups that previously were completely ignored are able to get a bit more visibility. The advance of technology has helped because it's easier for people to find others with common ideals/desires/biological imperatives. And to counter that, you have a large group of the media who want to stir up hatred of any minority group they can, because it gives them power to influence their viewers/readers/whatever and decide political talking points. It's no coincidence that the whole gender identity and trans issues suddenly became a hot and controversial topic in many countries worldwide at the same time.
In the 1930s, many countries had right-wing press who were complaining about the Jewish refugees invading their country, which was because they were fleeing Hitler. The playbook hasn't changed, and humanity seems to have a natural desire to have a group as an enemy that are evil and the cause of all their problems. One of the early actions of Hitler taking power was the destruction of studies on trans and gender identities, because that was also one of their boogeymen to focus the fear and hatred of the population so they would vote for him.
Hey there. I'm a history major and studied quite a bit of queer history, as a queer myself too. All terms regarding LGBTQ+ people are pretty new. Hell, we didn't even have the word homosexual until the mid-19th century. You're only hearing about it now partially because queer things have always been taboo, kept a secret, or only in queer spaces, and you very likely weren't in them. Being as frowned upon as it was, if you didn't grow up in queer spaces, chances are you'd never learn or hear of it.
There were entire areas known to house mostly trans or gay individuals, mainly areas with a lot of apartments, since the urbanization of areas meant that people could now afford homes without having to get married, and this naturally appealed to LGBTQ+ people. The Great Depression and World War I especially contributed to the formation of these spaces. Now, with people more open and integrated into society, it is beginning to make its way into mainstream media in a way that can't be avoided or unheard. Things change, and as we listen to more experiences, we adapt our language to reflect that. I encourage you to keep doing research regarding the language that was and is currently now used. It's an interesting topic, especially to see how this all developed relatively quickly.
And as a queer person, thanks for caring enough to do your own research too.
I'm 40. I've identified as asexual, agender for over 20 years. We were discussing non-binary identities in hole-in-the-wall message boards and chat rooms in the late 90s, early The only difference is, today, we have social media to share ideas. It's been a thing in academia for quite a while, but it's gradually become a mainstream subject in the past 10 years, I'd say. Then again, it's just a new coat of paint for issues that have probably always been there since the beginning of civilization. Societal roles being assigned according to sex and individuals not fitting inside them. Gender is still very much used interchangeably with sex, though it really depends on context. I was taught 30 years ago that gender is a set of norms and expectations set by society and attributed to the male and female sex. They didn't use the term social construct, but that's exactly what it was. The change I see in modern narratives is that biological sex is not really referenced, or in some cases ignored in favor of gender. We had Boy George as kids and nobody thought anything of it, not sure why it's such an issue with the right now. Most of the early understanding came about in the interwar period. Unfortunately, a lot of that research was done in Berlin, and then burned when the Nazis came to power. There have been trans people for a long time. But yes, you are hearing more about them now, since they are somewhat less likely to be physically attacked for being who they are. It's the same reason why there seem to be more gay people now than a century ago. When people come out of the closet, you can see them. Trans people have always existed. But like gay people and even left-handed people, left-handedness was once very taboo. Once they became more accepted in society, more of them started appearing. Not because people are turning others trans, gay, left-handed, but because those people aren't as scared of getting harmed for being trans, gay, left-handed. Also because of those things being more commonplace. Some people who wouldn't have realized the feelings they had were being trans will now that it's something that isn't instantly rejected. This does mean more people will be wrong and will end up detransitioning. But a majority of trans people want. Politics have largely become us and them, and if we're talking about the US, the entire identity of the Republican Party revolves around finding minorities to point their hate at to distract their voters from actual issues. Immigrants are taking your jobs. Drag queens reading to your kids are all pedos. Trans isn't a thing. You're a boy or girl. You take anything where we are trying to be inclusive and better as a society, and rest assured, there's a group waiting to weaponize their base to hate you for it. Woke as a word has even become an insult. As in, to better yourself is a bad thing, and I guess when you want your people stupid and angry it makes perfect sense. I'm Inuit so for us about 30,000 years ago, when it became profitable. No one seems to be answering the actual question. Transgender people used to go by transsexual. There has been a lot of social and medical progress in the last 20 years or so that have helped to change the perception. Transgender includes everyone who does not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth, which almost always is based on genitals. Intersex people exist. Transsexual is an outdated term, but some older trans folks still prefer it. In terms of why you hear about it more now, well, that's because a certain political group decided to make trans people a political issue to gain popularity with hateful people. I know several trans women that transitioned 10-15 years ago and never had a single issue because most people just didn't care. Now I'm transitioning and it's like 20% of the population is laser focused on outing me. It sucks. Really, the main reason is because the GOP is using it as a wedge issue, and because we have the internet now. Similar to how conspiracy people used to kind of sit in their corner of the world rambling nonsense, and you never had to hear about it. Now the internet lets them amplify their message and organize. With the political side of it, really it's just grievance politics. They want an issue to run on, so they make one up. This is historically common. IMHO. This question is too vague to be answered without a purely empirical large-scale statistical study that gives the term some quantified meaning. It's not clear enough what popularized and mainstream means here, how it should be interpreted. Moreover, the question leaves open in which country and group. I suppose OP means the US and US population as a whole. But it's worth noting there is a huge continental versus coastal and urban center versus countryside divide in the US. And averaging above those can smudge important differences in societal attitudes. Anyway, despite all these caveats, I'll take a shot and tentatively answer the question with, during the past 2 decades. Because attacking them has become a significant Republican activity. Unfortunately, a lot of things were swept under the rug, if you will, made to be kept a secret, especially for fear of violence and other abuses. I found out in my own family that my grandparents kept my uncles having cancer at a young age quiet, because they were afraid of unnecessarily worrying the neighbors, or the neighbors finding out the family's business. Which was a laugh because my grandfather was the town's barber, and he was prominent in the church. Everybody knew him and his family. That's quite appalling today. Cancer. Can you believe it? Cancer was a taboo subject in my neighborhood at one time in the past. I saw a news show on Disney Plus with Jane Pauley about a person who was born without properly formed sex parts and hormone-making glands. I don't know the correct term. I'm sorry. And it affected their gender. Her parents raised her as a little girl. But as she grew older, she realized that she felt more like a man than she did a woman. And he made that transition. Can you imagine what that person went through? When other little boys and girls grew up, normally, and this one person had this secret, it's enough to make you go insane. OMG, it's heartbreaking. That story brought me to tears. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever forget it. OMG. But I do have to understand more of what happened to this person to cause all of this. I'm not good with medical speak. I have my own issues. And I need them explained like I was 5. I'm glad we talk about things more openly than we did in the past, because we talk about it openly, we can address it and help those people who need help. I think that's the reason why we're hearing more about this now. And I think it's a good thing. The Wikipedia article for sex-gender distinction has a pretty good breakdown of it. But essentially the terms sex and gender began to be relatively synonymous in English in the 14th century, though it didn't fully catch on until the 20th century. Gender was widely used to mean kind or variety. Linguists use the word gender to refer to grammatical gender, separate from physical sex. X. Girl in German is neuter, not feminine. English doesn't have true grammatical gender, so it can be hard to wrap your head around if English is your only language. Between the 60s and 70s is when authors started to distinguish between physical sex, the hormones, chromosomes, and physical manifestation of reproductive traits, and gender, the socio-cultural roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes considered appropriate depending on your sex. The words sex and gender have become even less synonymous since the 2010s. TBH, it is mostly because the media have decided to divide us because insert reasons. It is crazy how when you get off social media and stop watching lying ass news, just how much we all really just want to live our lives and actually are pretty chill.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.